The sky above Velar Prime burned orange and red. Smoke rose from the ruined buildings of the capital city. Ambassador stood at the tall window of the government building and watched another explosion light up the darkness. His 4 eyes were tired. He had not slept in 17 days. The hung in the sky like metal monsters. There were hundreds of ships up there, each one carrying weapons that could destroy entire cities. The people had no chance against such power. They were scholars and artists. They built libraries and museums. They had never built weapons of war. Turned away from the window, his long purple robes dragged on the floor as he walked to the council table. The other members of the High Council sat there with fear in their eyes. Some of them were crying. Others simply stared at nothing, their hope completely gone. "The shields will fail within 6 hours," said Commander. He was the last military leader left alive. His uniform was torn and dirty. Blood stained his sleeve from a wound he refused to treat. "When the shields fall, the ground forces will land. We cannot stop them." Sat down slowly. His old bones ached. He had lived for 200 years and he had never seen anything like this. The Dominion had appeared at the edge of their system 3 weeks ago. They sent one message: surrender or die. They had sent distress signals to every member of the Galactic Assembly. They begged for help. They offered anything they had, but no one came. The other species were too afraid of no one wanted to be next. "What about the humans?" asked Counselor. She was young, only 40 years old. Her voice shook as she spoke. "They are new to the galaxy. Perhaps they do not know to be afraid." Shook his head. "The humans are a young species. They have been traveling between stars for less than 100 years. Their ships are small. Their weapons are primitive compared to even if they wanted to help, they could not." Remembered reading about humans in the archives. They came from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. They were strange creatures with only 2 eyes and soft skin. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no armor. By all logic, they should never have survived on their own world, yet somehow they had. A loud explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered and went dark for a moment before coming back on. Somewhere in the city, people were screaming. "We must surrender," said Counselor. He was an old man with gray skin and trembling hands. "If we surrender, perhaps they will show mercy. Perhaps they will let some of us live." "They do not show mercy," replied. "On every world they conquer, they take the young as slaves. The old and the weak are killed. Our culture, our history, our art, everything we have built for 10,000 years will be destroyed." Closed his eyes. He thought of his hiding in the underground shelters with thousands of other. He thought of the great library that held the knowledge of 100 generations. He thought of the gardens where his wife had loved to walk before she died. All of it would be gone soon. "Then we die with honor," said Counselor. Her voice was stronger now. "We do not surrender, we do not beg. We stand and we face the end with courage." Nodded slowly. "I will order what remains of our defense force to fight to the last soldier. We cannot win, but we can make the pay for every step they take on our world." The council members began to stand. They would return to their families, say their goodbyes, and prepare for the end. There was nothing else to do. Then the communication officer burst through the door. His eyes were wide with shock. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his data pad. "Ambassador," he gasped, "you need to see this. There are ships, new ships, coming out of faster-than-light travel right now." Felt his heart skip a beat. Could it be? Had someone finally answered their call? He rushed to the window with the others close behind. They looked up at the night sky, past the burning satellites and the dark shapes of the fleet. There in the distance, new lights were appearing. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace one after another. They were smaller than the vessels, but there were many of them. 40, 50, more coming every second. "Who are they?" whispered. The communication officer looked at his data pad with disbelief on his face. The transponder codes say they are from Earth. They are humans. Silence fell over the council chamber. No one moved. No one breathed. That is impossible, finally said. The humans are on the other side of the galaxy. Even if they heard our distress signal, they would have no reason to come. We have nothing to offer them. We have no treaty with them. We have never even spoken to them. But the ships kept coming. The small human fleet moved toward the blockade without hesitation. They did not slow down. They did not turn away. Watched with wonder as the human ships began to spread out into a formation he did not recognize. It was not like anything in the Galactic Assembly tactical database. The ships moved in ways that seemed random but somehow purposeful. The fleet turned their weapons toward the newcomers. Energy beams lit up the sky. Missiles streaked through the darkness. The battle had begun. They are attacking, said. His voice was filled with amazement. They are actually attacking. Do they not understand they are outnumbered? Do they not know they cannot win? Watched a small human ship dodge between two cruisers, firing at both of them. The ship was tiny compared to its enemies, but it moved with incredible speed and skill. Two more human ships joined it, working together like pack animals hunting much larger prey. Perhaps, said quietly, the humans know something we do not. Down in the shelters beneath the city, the children heard the sound of battle in the sky. They were scared. They held onto their parents and cried. But among the explosions and the fear, there was now something else, something that had been missing for 17 terrible days. There was hope. The humans had come. No one knew why, no one knew how, but they had come. And in that moment, everything changed. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the USS Gallant with his hands clasped behind his back. Through the view screen, he could see the fleet spread out before them like a wall of metal and fire. There were at least 200 enemy ships. His fleet had 48. All ships report ready, sir, said his first officer, Lieutenant Amy Hart. She was young, only 26 years old, but she was calm under pressure. That was why Daniel had chosen her. Good, Daniel said. Tell all captains to follow attack pattern Delta. We hit them hard and fast. We break through to the planet and we hold position until the ground forces are deployed. The USS Gallant shook as enemy fire struck the shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, but no one panicked. Every person on this ship had volunteered for this mission. They knew the risks. Far below, in the drop bay of the USS Gallant, Sergeant Moore checked her rifle for the 10th time. Around her, 200 Marines of the 117th Expeditionary Unit were doing the same. The air was thick with tension and the smell of metal and sweat. Listen up, said loud enough for everyone to hear. In about 15 minutes, we are going to drop into a war zone. There are civilians down there, families, children, that want to kill them or take them as slaves. We are not going to let that happen. Private Ben Torres looked up at her. He was 19 years old, fresh out of training. This was his first real mission. His hands were shaking. Sergeant, he said, the briefing said they are twice our size. They have armor that can stop our bullets. How are we supposed to fight them? Walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. Her grip was firm and steady. They are big, she said. They are strong, but they have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. They do not know how hard we fight when we are protecting someone. They are going to learn. The ship shook again, harder this time. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance there was an explosion. Drop in 10 minutes, the speaker announced. All Marines to your pods. Led her company to the drop pods. Each pod was a small metal capsule that would fall through the atmosphere and land on the planet's surface. It was not a comfortable ride. Many soldiers called them coffins with rockets. Corporal Lisa Franklin climbed into the pod next to. She was older than most of the others, 35 years old with gray starting to show in her dark hair. She had been through 4 combat deployments already. "You ready for this?" Lisa asked. "Always," replied. She climbed into her pod and strapped herself in. The metal closed around her like a shell. In orbit, the battle was getting worse. The USS Gallant took a direct hit to its port side. Flames burst from the hull before the vacuum of space sucked out the oxygen and killed the fire. Daniel gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship lurched sideways. "Damage report," he ordered. "Deck 7 is gone," Amy said. Her voice was tight but controlled. 30 casualties, shields at 40%. "Keep pushing forward," Daniel said. "We need to clear a path for the drop ships." 3 cruisers moved to block their way. Each one was 5 times the size of the Gallant. Their weapons charged with a low hum that could be felt even through the walls of the ship. "Sir," said the helmsman, "those cruisers are going to tear us apart." Daniel nodded slowly. He looked at the view screen, studying the enemy formation. Then he saw it, a gap between the middle cruiser and the one on the right. It was small, barely wide enough for a ship to fit through, but it was there. "Helm full speed ahead, take us through that gap." The helmsman stared at him. "Sir, that is suicide." "No," Daniel said, "that is Tuesday, do it." The USS Gallant surged forward. The cruisers opened fire. Energy beams sliced through space, missing the human ship by meters. The Gallant twisted and rolled, moving in ways that should have been impossible for a ship its size. They shot through the gap just as the 2 cruisers fired at each other by mistake. One of them exploded in a ball of orange flame. "We are through," Amy reported. "Drop zone is clear." "All ships," Daniel announced over the fleet channel, "begin ground deployment. Get our people down there." Across the human fleet, drop pods launched like metal rain falling toward the burning planet below. Thousands of soldiers were on their way. In her pod felt the vibration as the thrusters fired. The heat of re-entry made the metal walls glow red. Sweat ran down her face. Her teeth rattled in her skull. Then the pod hit the ground hard. The door blew open, was out and running before the smoke cleared. Around her, more pods were landing. Marines poured out, weapons ready. The capital city of Velar Prime spread out before them. Buildings were on fire. The streets were full of rubble, and in the distance could see the tall shapes of soldiers marching toward the civilian shelters. "Alpha Company, form up on me," she shouted. "We move fast, we hit hard. No one gets left behind, move." The Marines ran through the ruined streets. Their boots pounded on broken stone. Somewhere ahead, they could hear the sound of alien weapons and the screams of frightened people. Ben Torres ran beside. His fear was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Anger, determination. These aliens were hurting innocent people. That was not something he could accept. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of warriors. The aliens were tall, nearly 8 feet, with thick armor covering their bodies. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness. For a moment, both sides stared at each other. Then raised her rifle. "Welcome to Velar Prime," she said. "Now get off this planet." She pulled the trigger, and the battle began. They were strong. They were fast. But the humans were fighting for something more than victory. They were fighting for people they had never met, for a world that was not their own, for the simple belief that when someone cries for help, you answer. And as the first soldier fell to human weapons, something changed in the galaxy forever. The humans had arrived, and they were not going to stop until every last civilian was safe. The central plaza of the capital had once been a beautiful place. Fountains had sprayed clean water into the air. Gardens had grown with purple and blue flowers. Families had come here to walk and talk and enjoy the peace of their world. Now it was a battlefield. Private Ben Torres pressed his back against a broken wall. Plasma fire screamed over his head. The heat was so intense he could feel it through his helmet. Beside him, Corporal Lisa Franklin was reloading her rifle with steady hands. There are at least 20 of them across the plaza, Lisa said. They have the high ground. If we try to cross, they will cut us down. Ben looked around. The rest of their squad was scattered behind other pieces of cover. Some were wounded. One was not moving at all. They had them trapped. Then Sergeant Moore came running through the smoke. She slid behind the wall next to them, breathing hard but not panicking. "Okay," she said. "New plan. Lisa, take your fire team left through that collapsed building. Ben, you are with me. We go right through the market street. We hit them from both sides at once." "That market street is full of enemy soldiers," Ben said. "We will never make it." Looked at him. Her eyes were calm and hard. "Yes, we will," she said. "Because we have to. There are civilian shelters behind those positions. If we do not push through, those people die. So we push through, understood?" Ben swallowed hard. "Understood, Sergeant." Nodded. "Move out in 30 seconds. Go." Lisa gathered her team and disappeared into the ruined building. Checked her rifle one more time and then looked at Ben. "Stay behind me," she said. "Shoot anything that is not human and do not stop moving. Speed is life." They ran. The market street was chaos. Broken stalls and scattered goods covered the ground. The bodies of civilians lay where they had fallen. Ben tried not to look at them. He tried not to think about the families that would never be whole again. A soldier stepped out from behind a collapsed wall. It was huge, nearly 3 times Ben's weight. Its armor was thick and black. Its weapon glowed with deadly energy. Shot first. 3 rounds hit the soldier in the gap between its helmet and chest plate. The alien stumbled. Shot again. It fell. "Keep moving," she shouted. They ran past the fallen enemy. 2 more appeared ahead. Ben raised his rifle and fired on instinct. His shots were not perfect, but they forced the aliens to take cover. Threw a grenade. The explosion shook the street. "Push through," ordered. They emerged on the other side of the market. At the same moment, Lisa's team appeared from the collapsed building. In the plaza suddenly found themselves under fire from 2 directions. The battle was short and brutal. The humans were smaller and weaker than their enemies, but they moved faster. They worked together, and they refused to give up no matter how bad the situation looked. When the last soldier fell, took a moment to catch her breath. Her armor was scorched. A cut on her forehead was bleeding into her eye, but she was alive. "Check for survivors," she ordered. "Both are people and civilians." Medic Grant was already running toward the wounded. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, with red hair tied back in a tight braid. Her hands were covered in blood, but they never stopped moving. She found 3 wounded Marines and patched them up quickly. Then she heard a sound, a small voice crying in the rubble. Pushed aside broken stones and found a child. The little one was scared and hurt, with a deep cut on its leg. Did not hesitate. She picked up the child and carried it to safety. "It is okay," she said softly. "You are safe now. We are here to help." The child did not understand her words. The translator systems were still setting up, but it understood her tone. It understood that this strange creature with only 2 eyes and soft skin was not going to hurt it. The child stopped crying. Across the plaza, Captain Cole was setting up a command post. He had landed with the second wave of troops and was now coordinating the ground offensive. Maps and data screens flickered in front of him. "Report," he said into his communicator. "Alpha Company has secured the central plaza," his voice came back. "We have casualties, but we are holding. Civilian shelters are safe for now." "Good work, Sergeant. Beta Company is pushing toward the power station. Charlie Company is protecting the hospital district. We are making progress." But the progress was slow. For every block they secured, they fought back hard. They were losing soldiers at a rate that could not continue, and they just kept coming. Private Chris was alone. His squad had been separated during a counterattack. He had taken cover in a small building on the edge of the hospital district. Through the window, He could see soldiers gathering for another push. He had 20 rounds left in his rifle, no grenades, no backup. Chris was 20 years old. He had joined the military because he wanted to help people. He had never imagined he would die on an alien world far from home. But as he watched them prepare their attack, he did not run. He did not hide. He found a good position by the window and raised his rifle. "Okay," he said to himself. "If I am going to die, I am going to take as many of these things with me as I can." He started singing an old song his grandfather had taught him. It was a song about courage and standing your ground. His voice was shaky at first, but it grew stronger. The attack Chris fired, one fell, then another, then another. For 6 hours, Chris held that building alone. When his rifle ran out of ammunition, he used his sidearm. When that ran out, he used his knife. When a finally broke through the door, Chris hit it with a piece of broken furniture. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Chris still standing. He was wounded in 3 places. He was covered in enemy blood. He was still singing that old song. "Private," the rescue squad leader said with amazement, "you held off an entire squad by yourself." Chris looked at him with tired eyes. "They were heading for the hospital," he said. "There are children in there. I was not going to let them through." The news of Chris' stand spread through the human forces like fire. It reminded them why they were fighting. It reminded them what they were capable of. And it terrified them. They had conquered 47 worlds. They had faced armies and empires, but they had never faced anything like humans. Creatures that would fight alone against impossible odds. Creatures that would sing while they died. Creatures that simply refused to accept defeat. The commander sent a message to Warlord in orbit. "The humans are insane," the message said. "They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They protect aliens they have never met as if they were their own family. I request reinforcements immediately." But Warlord was dealing with problems of his own. In orbit, the human fleet was still fighting. And somehow, despite being outnumbered 4-1, they were winning. The tide was beginning to turn. In orbit above Velar Prime, the battle had been raging for 18 hours. The USS Gallant was barely holding together. Half its weapons were destroyed. Its shields were gone. Fires burned on 3 decks. But Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price refused to retreat. "Status report," he said. His voice was hoarse from hours of shouting orders. Lieutenant Amy Hart checked her screens. Her uniform was torn and there was a bandage on her arm, but she was still at her station. "We have lost 12 ships," she said. "Another 15 are heavily damaged, but they have lost more. We have destroyed at least 40 of their vessels. Their formation is breaking apart." Daniel nodded. He looked at the view screen where the burning wreckage of both human and ships floated in the darkness of space. So many lives lost. So many families that would receive bad news when this was over. But the mission was not finished. "Signal all ships," Daniel said. "We push forward, protect the hospital ships at all costs. Nothing gets through." In her fighter craft, Lieutenant Commander Adams led Eagle Squadron through the heart of the fleet. She was the best pilot in the United Earth Navy. Today, she was proving it. "Eagle 3, break left," she called out. "Eagle 7, cover his tail. We have incoming from above." Interceptors swarmed around them. There were 5 enemy fighters for every human craft. The odds were impossible. Did not care about odds. She pulled her fighter into a tight roll, spinning between 2 enemy ships. Her weapons blazed. One fighter exploded. Then another. She moved so fast the enemy targeting systems could not lock onto her. "They cannot predict human pilots," she said with a grim smile. "Our training manuals told us that was our weakness. Turns out it is our strength." Eagle Squadron tore through the interceptor screen. When they emerged on the other side, 30 enemy fighters were destroyed. Had lost 2 of her own pilots, but the path was clear. "Eagle Squadron to Fleet Command," she reported. "The way to the flagship is open. Recommend coordinated strike." Daniel received the message and made his decision. "All available ships form up on the Gallant. We are going after Warlord directly. Cut off the head and the body will fall." The remaining human ships gathered together. They were battered and broken, but they were not beaten. Together, they charged toward the massive command vessel. On the surface, Captain Cole was organizing the counteroffensive. The humans had been defending for 18 hours. Now it was time to attack. "We have identified the main command center," he said to his officers gathered around the tactical map. "It is in the old industrial district. Heavy defenses, at least 500 enemy soldiers." Sergeant Moore studied the map. Her face was dirty and tired, but her eyes were sharp. "If we take that command center, the ground forces lose coordination. They become easier to fight." "That is the plan," Cole said. "But they have prisoners there, 20 civilians. If we attack too hard, they might execute them." Sergeant Jake stepped forward. He was a big man with broad shoulders and a quiet voice. "Then we do not attack hard," he said. "We go in quiet, a small team, get the prisoners out first, then signal the main force to attack." Cole looked at him. "That is extremely dangerous. You would be walking into the heart of the enemy base with only a handful of soldiers." Jake shrugged. "I did not join the Marines because I wanted to be safe. I joined because I wanted to make a difference. This makes a difference." He picked 6 volunteers. They painted their faces dark. They checked their weapons, and they disappeared into the night. The command center was heavily guarded. Soldiers patrolled every entrance. Sensors watched every approach. It should have been impossible to enter without being detected. Jake found a way. He led his team through the old sewer system beneath the industrial district. They crawled through filth and darkness for 2 hours. When they emerged, they were inside the base. "Quiet," Jake whispered. "Take out any guards silently. No alarms." The team moved like shadows. One by one, guards fell without making a sound. The humans were smaller and weaker, but they were trained for exactly this kind of work. They found the prisoners in a holding cell deep inside the base. 20 civilians huddled together in fear. When they saw the human soldiers, they did not understand at first. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "We are here to help," he said slowly. His translator device turned his words into the language. "We are going to get you out of here. Stay quiet and follow us." An elderly man looked at him with wonder. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you risk your lives for us? We are nothing to you." Jake helped the old man stand. "You are not nothing," he said. "You are people, and people help each other. That is what we do." They moved through the base, 20 civilians surrounded by 6 soldiers. It was slow going. They were weak and scared. Some of them could barely walk. But Jake refused to leave anyone behind. They were almost out when the alarm sounded. A patrol had found the bodies of the guards. Suddenly, the entire base was on high alert. "Run," Jake ordered. "Everyone run now." They burst out of the building into the open air. Soldiers were coming from every direction. There were too many to fight. Jake grabbed his radio. We have the prisoners. We are coming out the north entrance. We need support now." Captain Cole's voice came back immediately. "Support is on the way. Hold on." The night lit up with fire. Human soldiers appeared on the rooftops around the industrial district. They opened fire on the forces, drawing attention away from Jake and the prisoners. Sergeant Moore led a charge through the main gate, her company smashing through the enemy lines like a hammer. "Go, go, go," she shouted. "Get those civilians to safety." Jake and his team ran with the prisoners. Behind them, the battle raged. Human soldiers fought and died to give them time. When they finally reached the safe zone, Jake counted the civilians. 20, All 20 were alive. He fell to his knees from exhaustion. Blood was running from a wound on his side he had not even noticed, but he was smiling. Private Ben Torres ran up to him. "Sergeant, you are hurt. Let me get a medic." Jake shook his head slowly. "I am fine," he said. "We got them out, that is what matters." In orbit, the human fleet reached the flagship. The battle was fierce but short. Warlord, who had conquered 47 worlds without defeat, watched as his ship burned around him. "This is impossible," he said. "They are primitives, they are weak. How can they be winning?" His officers had no answer. None of them understood. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price opened a communication channel to the flagship. "This is the USS Gallant," he said. "Surrender now and your crew will be treated fairly. Continue fighting and you will die. The choice is yours." For a long moment there was silence. Then Warlord spoke. "We do not surrender." The human fleet opened fire. 5 minutes later the flagship was destroyed. And with it, the hope of the invasion. On the surface, the enemy soldiers began to fall back. Without their leader, without coordination, they were losing. The humans pressed their advantage. By morning, the capital city was free. The tide had not just turned, it had become a flood. The sun rose over Velar Prime on the 19th day. It was the first sunrise the people had seen without fear since the invasion began. The orange light spread across the ruined capital, touching broken buildings and shattered streets. But it also touched something else. It touched hope. Ambassador walked through the central plaza with Commander at his side. The sounds of battle had finally stopped. In their place was a strange silence, broken only by the distant voices of rescue workers and the crying of children being reunited with their families. Human soldiers stood guard at every corner. They were tired. Many were wounded, but they stood straight and alert, watching over a people they had never met before, protecting a world that was not their own. Stopped when he saw Sergeant Moore. She was sitting on a broken piece of wall, drinking water from a metal container. Her armor was burned and cracked. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she had not slept in days. "Sergeant," said quietly. Looked up, she set down her water and stood to face him. "Ambassador," she replied with a small nod. Did not know what to say. Words seemed too small for what he felt. This woman and her soldiers had crossed the galaxy to save his people. They had fought and bled and died for strangers. "Why?" he finally asked. It was the only question that mattered. Was quiet for a moment. She looked around at the ruined plaza, at the civilians beginning to emerge from the shelters, at the prisoners being led away in chains. "When I was a little girl," she said, "my grandmother told me a story. There was a village by a river. One day the river flooded. The village was drowning. Everyone in the nearby town said it was too dangerous to help, but one farmer got in his boat and went anyway. He saved 30 people that day. When they asked him why, he said something I never forgot." She paused and looked at with tired but warm eyes. "He said that when someone is drowning, you do not ask if it is safe to help. You jump in the water, because that is what people do." Felt tears forming in his 4 eyes. "Your grandmother was wise." Smiled slightly. She was. She also made really good cookies. A small laugh escaped despite everything. It felt strange to laugh after so much pain, but somehow it also felt right. In orbit, the remaining ships had fled. They ran back to their own territory with their dead leader and their broken pride. The fleet that had conquered 47 worlds had been stopped by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the battered USS Gallant and watched them go. His ship was barely functional. Half his crew was dead or wounded, but they had won. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Hart said, "the fleet is gone. They are not coming back." Daniel nodded slowly. He thought of all the people who had died to make this moment possible. Good people, brave people, people who would never see their homes again. "Send a message to Earth Command," he said. "Tell them the mission is complete. Velar Prime is secure." He paused and added quietly, "Tell them the price was high, but we paid it. We always pay it." The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The Galactic Assembly held an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss what had happened. They had refused to help, though. They had been too afraid of the. And then the humans, the youngest and smallest species in the galaxy, had done what they could not. The human ambassador was a woman named Laura. She stood before the assembly with calm dignity. She was not tall or impressive looking. She wore simple clothes, but when she spoke, everyone listened. "Why did Earth intervene?" demanded the representative from the Confederacy. "What do you want in return? What resources are you claiming?" Laura looked at him for a long moment. "We heard a cry for help," she said simply. "We answered. That is what humans do." Silence fell over the assembly hall. "But you lost ships," another representative said. "You lost soldiers. Your people died for a species you had never met. That makes no sense." Laura smiled gently. "To you, perhaps it makes no sense, but to us, it is simple. We believe that the strong should protect the weak. We believe that when someone is in trouble, you help them. We believe that every life has value, no matter where it comes from or what it looks like." She paused and looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at her. "The belief that power is everything, that the strong rule and the weak serve. We believe something different. We believe that true strength is using your power to help others. And that is why we came to Velar Prime. Not for territory, not for resources, not for glory. We came because people needed help, and we were able to give it." The assembly was silent. Then slowly, the representative stood and began to applaud. Others joined him. Soon the entire hall was filled with the sound of hands and appendages and tentacles striking together in approval. On Velar Prime, the rebuilding had already begun. Human engineers worked alongside architects. Human medics treated wounded. Human soldiers helped clear the rubble from streets that would one day be beautiful again. Private Ben Torres sat on a pile of broken stone and watched a group of children playing nearby. They were laughing. After everything that had happened, they were able to laugh again. A small child walked up to him. It was the same child that Medic Grant had saved from the rubble. The child held out a small purple flower, one of the few that had survived the bombardment. Ben took the flower carefully, his eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he said softly. The child did not understand his words, but it smiled anyway and ran back to its friends. Ben looked at the flower for a long time. Then he tucked it carefully into his pocket next to his heart. Sergeant Moore found him there an hour later. "Ready to go home?" she asked. Ben stood up slowly. He looked around at the city, at the people beginning to rebuild their lives, at the human soldiers packing up their equipment. "Sergeant," he said, "I have been thinking. Before this mission, I was not sure I made the right choice joining the military. I was scared all the time. I did not know if I could do this." "Waited. But now I know," Ben continued. "This is exactly where I am supposed to be. This is what I am supposed to do. Help people, protect people, make a difference." Put a hand on his shoulder. "That is exactly right, Private, and I am proud to serve with you." The human fleet gathered in orbit, preparing for the long journey home. But before they left, Ambassador came aboard the USS Gallant for one final meeting. He stood on the bridge with Lieutenant Commander Daniel Price and presented him with a gift, a small crystal containing the complete history of the people. "So that you will remember us," said, "so that your children and their children will know what happened here. Know that you saved us. Know that because of you, our people will survive." Daniel accepted the gift with deep respect. "We will never forget," he said, "and if they ever come back, we will be here again." Nodded, there were tears in his eyes. "I believe you will." The human fleet jumped to hyperspace and disappeared, but their impact on the galaxy remained forever. The Dominion eventually tried again. They gathered their remaining forces and launched a new invasion. But this time, they did not find the alone. 37 species stood with them. 37 species that had been inspired by what the humans had done. 37 species that had learned a simple truth. When all hope seems lost, sometimes help comes from the most unexpected place. Sometimes it comes from a young species that refuses to believe the strong must prey upon the weak. Sometimes it comes from people who simply cannot stand by and watch others suffer. Sergeant Moore retired eventually. She lived in a small house by the ocean and grew flowers in her garden. Sometimes visitors would come to see her, bringing gifts and stories and gratitude. She would invite them in for tea and tell them the same thing she had told everyone since the battle. We are not heroes. We are just people who believe that when someone is in trouble, you help them, no matter who they are, no matter the cost. And in schools across the galaxy, children of 100 different species learned about the Battle of Velar Prime. They learned about the siege and the despair. They learned about the unexpected arrival of human ships. But most of all, they learned the lesson that the humans taught them. No one fights alone. Not anymore. Not ever again.